Data privacy, intellectual property, energy consumption bias, they're all big ethical issues that need to be debated about LLMs like ChatGPT. But what sadly isn't up for debate, whether you like it or not, is whether these things like ChatGPT are going to stick around. These companies are going to entwine them into our lives and your children's lives, and therefore we need to understand the ethical issues. In this little video, we're going to go through errors and bias. I'm going to give you 4 little bits of information about that, and then 1 possible solution to it. As always, if you find the information useful, a like really helps. And if you want more information about AI and education, follow lots of other videos on the channel. Issue number 1, their greatest strength is actually perhaps also their greatest weakness. These LLMs like ChatGPT give answers. Now, if you're saying, well, hang on, the internet's always done that. Well, it hasn't. If you think about it, what we've used in the past is Google search. You have a question, you put it into the search engine of Google, and it gives you a big long list of websites that you have to sift through and find the answers. LLMs like ChatGPT don't do that. They literally give answers. If we look at this relative search, if I put in a fairly trivial one, but if I put in who is the best surfer in the world and I put it into Google, it looks like this. You can see lots of websites where I'm left to sift through and find who I think is the best surfer. Now, if I put the same trivial question into ChatGPT, we can have a look at the answer. Straight away, it's throwing out to me the name John Florence, giving to me that almost as a fact. Issue number 2 is, well, where did it get that fact and an answer from? Well, it was pre-trained on the open source internet, which does have amazing amounts of information, loads of accurate stuff, but it also has loads of forum bickering and unpublished romance novels. All of that it was pre-trained on. It then gets refined afterwards by the companies. But we have to bear in mind the internet isn't necessarily, well, isn't a reflection of the world we live in. For example, I think 26% of the world are first language English, yet 60% of all websites are written in English. Therefore, it's going to have a distortion in its answer. Issue number 3 is it gets things wrong, out and out wrong. Ethan Mollick talks about the jagged frontier of generative AI. What he means by that is we don't know, in fact no one knows exactly what they can do and what they can't do. You're going to put in and find that it gives some answers brilliantly to definitive questions, and it can do certain things amazingly, like forecast the weather. But then on another day, you're going to try and ask how many R's are in the word strawberry, and it's going to get it completely wrong. The only way we can find out what it can do and what it can't do is by testing it. No one has those answers. So every so often, it is going to throw up a completely nonsensical wrong answer. Issue number 4. Now, I'm going to be a bit controversial. The other 3 issues aren't really that much of a problem. The real issue comes from point number 4. They wear lab coats. Now, humor me a moment for this ridiculous metaphor, but what I'm doing is I'm referencing an experiment that was done by Milgram in 1961. What he did, he was doing a study on obedience. And he got a group of people and he wanted to discover if he could order them into doing something unethical. So he sat them down and he ordered them to electrocute someone. He didn't actually electrocute, but they believed they were electrocuting someone. He ordered them to do it. 20% of the people followed blindly, without question, this unethical instruction and pressed the electrocute button. He then did the experiment again, but he dressed the instructors, the leaders, up in lab coats, dressed them as scientists. And he repeated the same words. What he found was that then 60% of the people blindly followed the instruction, the completely unethical instruction, and electrocuted the subjects. What's this got to do with ChatGPT? Well, the problem is, with all of the hype, the money that comes from these big companies, with the fact that they can genuinely give really good answers, most of the time, they're seeming like experts. They're seeming like the scientists wearing the lab coats. And therefore, there's a tendency for all of us not to question their output. And that's the disaster. We have to try and overcome that. So how do we do it? Well, metaphorically, we rip the lab coat off. In technical language, we use epistemic vigilance. In teacher language, we use critical thinking. You see, the problem is that they're not questioning. We're not questioning the output. We blindly trust it. That's when problems come in. But if we can take them off the pedestal and encourage people to question output, then the damage is limited. How do you do that? Well, in my lessons, what I do is I have a whiteboard in the corner of my room where everyone can see it. And I split it into two sides. On one side of the whiteboard, I have written immoral, unethical things ChatGPT has produced. On the other side, I have outright wrong answers that ChatGPT has given. And every time the children in my class discover something at home, every time they come across any of these issues, I encourage them, when they come to my lessons, to write them up on the board. And therefore we have a big list of all of the mistakes, pointing out this system isn't infallible. This is great because, hey, there's nothing better than trying to prove an expert wrong, so the children love it. They look for these mistakes, they find them, and then they spread the word and they share them when they find them. And secondly, because it's constantly being revisited, it's being reinforced. And therefore, they're acutely aware when they're using it that this thing isn't perfect. One final benefit of that, it helps with this jagged frontier term. We're starting to find out more and more, and they're learning as well, what you should be using these things for and what you shouldn't be using them for. As always, if you find the information useful, a like really helps. And if you want more information about AI and education, follow lots of other videos on the channel.